Okay. I don't know if more people will be showing up, but someone's here, so at least I'm not talking to myself. Yeah. So we started the recording. We're sponsored by ClassFlow. Since there's only two of us, we both know where we are, Pennsylvania and Houston. So I'll skip this slide and go right to the beginning. What I'm going to talk today about is a course design model that I've been experimenting with over the past year. It's really putting the students in charge of running the class and really even building the syllabus. This has been really kind of a risk, but I've gotten some really great rewards out of it. The students have really risen to the responsibility with an exceptional level of effort and engagement and creativity. So I'm going to go over what we did, what's worked, and what hasn't. If you have questions along the way, put them in the chat box. And I'd like to get feedback from you, like what do you think you could take away from this? What do you think you might add to it? First, a little about me. I told you I'm a librarian at the University of Pittsburgh campus in Johnstown. I specialize in library instruction and promoting information literacy and lifelong learning. Lifelong learning is kind of what got me into this field. And something I try to get across in my classes is that each of us is in charge of our own learning. I think that's the key to lifelong learning, is to take charge of that. So as a teacher, I try to create situations that foster and encourage learning more than I try to instruct students, I guess. Now, my partner in this venture is this guy, Jim Groom. I don't know if you've heard of him or not. He runs an online course in digital storytelling called DS106, and he's also running this domain of one's own initiative out of the University of Mary Washington. He's done a lot of brilliant work, and he writes all about it at his blog on Baba Tuesdays. And the nice thing about this partnership we have going here is that he's on campus at the University of Mary Washington. I'm online, so I can really throw out all kinds of my crazy ideas, expecting him to tone them down and rein me in. And instead, he pretty much jumps in with both feet and takes off with it. So the first class we collaborated on formally was a class in true crime. It was a freshman seminar investigating true crime narratives from colonial times to the present day. We put together a reading list and ran the class in this discussion format. And I had the idea to have pairs of students lead a week's discussion each. So 16 students, 8 pairs. They would run 8 weeks. We would model the other 7 weeks, basically, what they should be doing. But as it happens, one of the students dropped out just before the class started. So we made them into trios and gave them 2 weeks each. Basically, they ran the entire course that way. All the students were responsible for reading and participating in discussion, but the discussion leaders each week, they had to do background research on the novels or the writings that we were reading, and the cultural context, the time and place for each one. And they would build wiki pages for each one, so you have that true crime wiki there. Instead of writing papers as projects, we had them produce videos, which is actually a lot of fun. We didn't instruct them in how to do that. We just sort of gave them the tools and told them to go ahead. Hello, Eileen. And we also use blogging and commenting as a discussion forum. They had to blog each week, and one of the students gave us this comment that she thought the blogging was really heavy, but the key to that was, it was a key to the course because they learned so much through reflecting. By reflecting on what we're learning, they sort of internalize it more and formalize it. They also had to group presentations, and one of our students said this about it. It was a great idea. I think presenting, basically teaching, that's another way of learning. And the students really stepped up to that. The challenge I think we saw with this was getting the students to dig deeper into the stories. We would read things like the Confessions of Nat Turner, for example, and they just see the surface story, what happened there, not think about who wrote this or the context of it. So we had to push them on that. But they really started getting it towards the end. So that class went over so well that we decided to do this other one, which is actually finishing up next week, the Internet course. So what this course is all about, according to the catalog, it's a survey of technology and issues underlying the use of the Internet for communication, resource discovery, research, dissemination of information in multimedia formats. The topics would include introduction to Internet protocols, Internet history, and development, electronic mail, the use and functions of the browser. Oh, John's joined us too. Hello. Accessing Internet services and resources, using the Internet for research, website design, implementation, and social, legal, and ethical issues related to the Internet. That's a catalog description. So from there, I started thinking, how can I build out this course, and how can I take this whole thing a step further from what we did in true crime? If you're interested to look at the course, the URL is right there at the bottom of the page, theinternetcourse.net. So, several things that I took as inspirations for this course. One of them was this project that Michael Lesh did. You've probably heard of Michael Lesh. He's done some videos that went viral. The Machine is Using Us, The Machine is Us, and A Vision of Students Today. But he also did this experiment a few years ago where he had his class basically build the bibliography of readings right in the first week of class. They did a bunch of readings. Everyone would summarize what they read into a database, and everyone had to read everyone else's summaries. And right in the first 2 weeks of the class, they had this huge volume of reading that they had digested. A related thing that I took as inspiration was this thing called the Medrano Project from Paradise Valley Community College. What they did there was dispense with the expensive textbook and have the students basically build a living textbook through guided research. I met the people behind this, Sheila Ackman-Mans, Reyes Medrano, and Candace Ford Nicholson at the LOEX conference a couple years ago. And I thought this was like the best idea ever, really, to get the students involved in putting the class together under the teacher's supervision. The third thing I took as an inspiration was this concept mapping tool. George Siemens and Stephen Downs were promoting these things in the first MOOC that I had taken. And I've been sort of promoting concept mapping since then. Yeah, I used concept mapping. I really love working with this, and I think the students really pick up on it as a way of generating ideas, analyzing, organizing, and synthesizing information. I specifically wanted to use CMAP tools because it has a server version that allows people to work collaboratively. Yeah, you can embed the links in it as well. So my idea for this course, we came up with several broad main topics related to the Internet. Each student would get assigned 2 topics to cover, and they would have to find 3 good readings for each one. They'd have to summarize each reading for the class, and then do 2 concept maps, one for each topic, connecting all 3 readings. We would devote a week discussion to each topic, and the students assigned that topic would be like our panel of experts. In the second half of the semester, they would do in-depth research based on a group selected project. So I determined the topics, but we had the entire class brainstorm ideas for each one. So we gave them the main topic, privacy and openness, digital identity, and they would come up with the ideas that go with it. The nice thing about this is they're determining the approach to how we're going to cover this course. It's really driven by their interests. And they brought in some things that I really wouldn't have thought of, like catfishing and cryptocurrency, for example. We sent all this information from the brainstorming session to their librarian there, Peter Catlin, and he put together a research guide for the whole class dealing with these topics. We discussed the CRAP test. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It stands for currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose, as a way of evaluating each of the readings that they were bringing to the class. And we gave them a form to enter all these readings in. This is basically so they could avoid duplicating each other's work. We might ever want to come up with a different reading. And the form drops them into this Google form. So I use this traffic light metaphor to vet the different readings. Red means they can't use it, they should find something else. Typically that's because someone else found that reading already. Green means it's good to go, that was typically scholarly type research. Yellow meant they had to provide some kind of justification for why that's a good article to use for the course. Typically those were from trade journals or other journalistic sources as opposed to scholarly research. What really surprised me about this, almost immediately after we did this, another guy's class, this is from Brian Jackson, teaches high school in British Columbia, basically used our entire form immediately. And I love this. Brian Jackson at brianjack.ca writes about this probably a lot more intelligently than I can, but it was really valuable for me to see this happen because it lets me know I'm onto something. My background in pedagogy is not as strong as I would like, so this is really validating. So they did the readings and they summarized them for the entire class. Everyone had to read their summaries. Then I had them break them down into concept maps and also tie the concepts together. Nice thing about CMAP tools is, you can link. So they're linking back to their original readings. You can sort of see those icons on there. They're breaking down some of the ideas from each one, and they're kind of tying the readings together. There were some technical problems with getting this to work. The students had a little trouble getting HTML versions of the maps into their blogs. And there was a real problem with getting them to work collaboratively. I think that this might have been one too many tech tools for the class because they were also learning blogging, setting up their own sites at the same time. I really needed more time to work with the tool, and it probably would have helped if I was on the ground as opposed to online, so I could work with them there. But this is just a random example, dealing with 3 articles about how the internet works. So with their concept maps and the readings, one person did this, then there would be like 5 others on that same topic. They would be our panel of experts leading the discussion for that week. In my original vision, I thought as instructors we would be part of those panel of experts, but the students sort of rebelled and they wanted to do it on their own, which I actually thought was really awesome. So they were running the discussions for the entire course of the semester. And we would chime in, emphasizing important ideas, maybe bringing in things that the class had missed, but we really let the students drive it all, and we got an amazing level of engagement out of them from doing that. We wrote into our syllabus that we would do a midterm. I'm not a big fan of tests, but that was in there. So as we were talking about how to pull it together, Jim, who I was working with, came up with the idea, have the students write the midterm. Since they were doing these presentations, they should think, what are the important points, and come up with a question based on that. I thought it was a little crazy at first, but considering what we were doing, it made perfect sense. On top of that, we made the midterm basically open book, or open web in this case. And I think that made it more of a learning experience than a summative evaluation. This is another risk because the students really could have taken the easy way out and given them a simple test, given themselves a simple test, but they made something really very rigorous. A number of the people said it took them like 2 and 3 hours to complete this, in spite of the fact that it was open and online. We had the students grade the questions that they wrote as well, and they weren't forgiving on that, so it was a nice test. Now we're in the process of doing final projects. This one group, they decided to look at the ARPANET, and as part of their project, they're interviewing people around campus. What do you know about, well, they asked them, what is the internet, to define that? What's the difference between the internet and the web, and what is ARPANET? And most of the people were just about as clueless as that young child up at the top corner. There were a couple people who knew what we were talking about. So they're going to put this together with a timeline and make it into a web page as a final project for their part of the course. And the rest of the students are going to do similar things, timelines, videos, and embedding them into web pages. So through this whole course, since the 3rd week, the students have been running everything. I've been joining class online. My collaborator here, Jim Broom, was in the classroom with them, but a few times he's been away at conferences, so we've both been online. And the classes have come off without a hitch, that the students are just so invested in this process at this point that they've taken control of it. And the level of, yes, the students are face-to-face in the class, and Jim, the other teacher, would be in that class, and I'm typically big head on the screen in front of them. But sometimes we're both basically Skyping into class. The level of discussion that we've gotten out of them is pretty amazing. You know, how involved they are is like really nothing I've ever seen. 4 or 5 times this semester, we've had guest students drop in and join in the discussion. I don't think I've ever seen a student come into a class voluntarily just to see what it's about. And, you know, we have 4 or 5 of them this semester, so that was really just amazing. Now, looking at this from my librarian perspective, there's a lot of information literacy standards that the Association of College and Research Libraries pushes. These are the 5 standards flashing across the screen here. And I think all of those things are really embedded into this class. It's a struggle for me to connect this to classes on my campus, you know, to get into the classes with the teachers to drive these points home. But, you know, the students determine the nature and extent of the information needed. They really did that up front. They found the information, they accessed information effectively and efficiently. They evaluated the stuff and incorporated it, building web pages, Google Docs, blogging about all this information, and forming it into discussions each week. When it comes to understanding the ethical, legal, social issues around it, that was like part of our discussion, and we actually made copyright and fair use one of the topics of the course. Currently, the ACRL is revising our information literacy standards. So there come these threshold concepts, and I think this format is touching on those as well. Scholarship is conversation. They're seeing how these things tie together. Concept mapping kind of showed that. Research is inquiry. You know, the whole class was inquiry driven. Format as process, I have no idea what that's supposed to mean really. Authority is constructed and contextual. They looked at the authority. They did strategic searching. So what I'm really interested in as a librarian is pushing that kind of information literacy, lifelong learning, and we managed to build it into this whole course, and the students really seem to love it. So that's basically what I have. Are there questions that you have about anything I've talked about? That other teacher, Brian Jackson, was working at a high school level. They were studying a project, doing a unit on the English Civil War. And basically he followed the same thing, have the students find the readings. Instead of him vetting them, they actually discussed the readings as a group and voted on them, which are good, which are not so good. It wouldn't be the whole course, it might just be a unit, but I think it could be done. Yeah, you're welcome. I'm curious, how do you think you might apply that sort of process? Really? At an elementary level, like third graders, fifth graders? Yeah. And do you find that they really take to that, the fourth and fifth graders? Okay. Yeah. I don't know if it would work with every subject, but do you find that the students get more involved through doing that? Yeah, yeah. They take ownership of it. I think that's one of the nice things about having them find the readings. They're bringing it to it, so it's their content, and they're much more committed to that aspect of the course. I've been really impressed with the way that the students, jump on that and really get involved in the discussions. Yeah, self-motivation. At the fourth and fifth grade level, that could be a problem. That some people aren't quite into it. Yeah, they're going to school because they have to. The college students are a little more, they're paying for this. The first time we did it with true crime, it was a freshman seminar. So the nice thing about that was they had no idea that we were giving them a lot more work than normal. But they rose to it. It wasn't really until the end of the class, the end of the semester, that they realized this was a lot of work, but they still enjoyed it. Even though it's hard work, it's good work. Yeah, stepping back is hard. My collaborator there, he likes to talk a lot, so he really struggles with that. Yeah, I was always the kind of student who would sit back and not say anything, so it was a challenge for me to get in front. I seem to be good at it now, I think, and I'm a lot more comfortable with it. But in this last semester, I've really managed to sit back and be almost invisible there. I just step in a few places. Mostly I chime in on the blogs, and put my ideas in there, which sometimes they pick up on, and offer them advice and feedback on things that way. Yeah. One of the things I'm interested in finding out is, how does this help the students out down the road? I think putting them in that position to really drive their own education, are they going to be taking more control of it, in the semesters to come? We're planning on surveying this class to get more feedback on, how they felt about how we did this. But it would be great if we could get a hold of them like a year down the road, see if this really had an impact on how they do things. How might you do some of this stuff differently? I guess with 4th and 5th graders, you'd have to do a lot of things differently, but I'm interested in seeing what I might be missing here. Yeah. That's actually one of the advantages of joining the class online. I'm actually not on the books at University of Washington. This is just a partnership that lets me explore some ideas and lets him get some input into his class. In the case of this one, I really put it all together myself ahead of time, and he's been driving it. Well, he's been facilitating the students in person out there. But because I'm off campus, I can take a lot of risks. When we first did the true crime one, they were a little shaky on what they were supposed to do. But they really took to it. When we did this internet course, the first class, I didn't want to put that kind of pressure on them to have to lead it all, so I was going to make us part of the panel of experts. We'd be leading it as well as the students. And the first class, they said, you need to sit down and step back and let us take control of it. I mean, they really decided to do that. There are some students who are a little more quiet about it. But I think because everyone is doing it, they get more encouragement on that, and really everyone is, joining in and doing their part by the end of the semester. We had talked about running this course like really open online, actually like videotaping the class and broadcasting it, and some students really did balk at that. So, they vetoed that idea, and that was okay with us. But yeah, and I want to say this all works because we've got the best students, because yeah, we do. But we didn't choose them. That's just this class. We gave them that, and they rose to it. So I kind of feel like this could really work in other situations. I don't know, would this work for organic chemistry or algebra? You probably have to set up a class somewhat differently. But because, yeah, you do have to handhold them a lot. Even some college students need that as well. But, even though we were really pushing them, we didn't leave them without a net. Every week, I was going through all the readings they put together on that topic, thinking about all the stuff we have to cover, just being generally prepared in case they drop the ball. but it actually never came to the point where I had to like step in and save them. A couple times, like we looked at the history of the internet, and all their articles that they found went up to like 1999, so they missed like the last 15 years. So we assigned extra readings just to make sure everyone was covering that part of it. Sometimes we'd assign like a video for them to watch to give them the whole overview of the topic. But really, the readings that they brought to it was frame the whole content of the course. At the 4th and 5th grade level, you might have a problem with the students bringing in that kind of depth of research, but I think having them bring stuff to class to talk about, that means something to them, yeah, I think that would really be beneficial to them and keep them involved in it. Like as you said, they take ownership of it. Yeah, I hope so too. Yeah, so thank you for your time. Yeah, we need them to become independent. On the other hand, I think with the assessment that they're putting on us and the kinds of accountability that they're pushing to the schools for student learning, I think it shifts the way things should be. Students have to be responsible for doing the work, and if they're not doing it, they have to suffer the consequences. When they put that on us, then it becomes an issue. And I don't know how to get around that. It's sort of pushing them to be dependent, I guess. Yeah, well, they are trying to make the school more accountable for things. The last school I was at was, yeah, they've been trained to be spoon-fed. How do you get around that? I don't know. I mean, at some point you have to, I guess, be more instructive, but at some point they have to take more control of it. Just like they switch from learning to read to reading to learn, learning to write to writing to learn, I think over the long haul they're learning to learn. Hopefully they have it figured out by the time they come to college. They better have it figured out by the time they leave. I actually worked at a K through 6 school as the librarian a few years ago. When it came to the 4th and 5th graders and the 6th graders, it was a challenge to get them to do anything in my class because they were the big kids. They do what they want. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. You do the concept mapping, you said, right? Have you done anything with like blogs or wikis with the students? Oh, you get them to do, oh, Emoto, yeah, okay. I tried working with that at one point, but it was giving me trouble. It was probably the campus I was at was interfering with it. Yeah, it is confining. On the other hand, with students that young, you do have to be a little more protective of them. We're dealing with adults, so we can put them on the open web. The chat feature, yeah. Yeah. Google Docs would be another thing, and that's something we've kind of been working with instead of a wiki this semester. Wikis are fun because it gets them familiar with, how to edit that kind of stuff. But the coding is it sort of has its own code language in the wiki that the students have to figure out. Yeah. Actually, the first class that I worked with Jim on was a freshman seminar on hard-boiled detective fiction. Yeah, they know how to do their tricks, but they don't know how to apply them or go beyond that usually. And so we did a class on hard-boiled detective fiction, and instead of writing papers in that class, the students had to write Wikipedia pages for some of the books that we had read. And I thought that was a really nice project because it got them thinking about Wikipedia from the other side of it, how it goes together. That it's built off the citations and you have to have them put in there. And the nice thing about it is, they can always point to those articles and say, hey, I did that one, and it's out there. I can look back at it a year later and see thousands of people have accessed this article. Some of them have updated and changed it, but yeah, they're published. They're being used. That was actually a challenge for them writing the Wikipedia articles because they're used to trying to write stuff to keep the teacher happy. And in this case, they had to write stuff to be useful, which is kind of a cognitive shift for them. Yeah. Yeah, actually the blogs are nice because you can be personal. We encourage them to personalize their blogs, to do it their own way and express themselves in a way they're comfortable, to develop their own online identity. Basically what they're doing at the University of Mary Washington is trying to get them to use their blog as a portfolio of their entire education experience. In some cases, there's some real advantages to that. I mean, one student, it can be a blessing and a curse depending on what they put out there. This is true. One of the students in our class, for his blog title, he took the name Torque Team Captain. That was an embarrassment for him the second week, but he can change that and fix it. But Jim tells a story about another student in the literature class there, was blogging about one of the books she had to read for the course, and apparently the author of that book had Googled his name, found this blog, and actually interacted with the student through the comments. Walking away from the class, she's not going to remember what she got in the grade. She's going to remember, yeah, this author came and talked to me. Yeah. Stuff is still out there. But I think, we all learn and grow. And if you've got this whole thing there as a process, it's not necessarily a bad thing. You can show how much you've progressed. The problem is, if someone just stumbles onto this one page, and that's Torque Team Captain is the image they associate with this person. But on the other hand, he actually didn't have his name or photo associated with the page at all. So he does have a way out. Yeah. 'Cause, 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 Yeah. Um, well, I heard that was actually, like, good behavioral advice. Never do anything that you wouldn't do in front of your mom. Advice for better living. When it comes to being online, yeah, people really need to think about that. But especially the college students, they're going to graduate, they're going to be looking for jobs, and the first thing their employer is going to do is Google them. So if they're taking control of their identity there, in the case of the University of Washington, they're encouraging them to build out this digital portfolio to showcase their identity. If that's well constructed and well built, that's just going to come up in the Google search as opposed to maybe what's on their Facebook page. And so the serious side of them is showing. And they could actually make it part of the resume as well. This is my website, this is what I have to say. And that could add something too to like an interview situation. Your interviews know something about you going into it. So, yeah. All right. Well, it's been great having you here for this presentation. It would have been really boring if I was on my own. Well, I appreciate that too. I hope this chat is coming through in the recording as well, or else it's going to be really one-sided when someone listens to it. But yeah, good. Okay. Do you have more questions? Okay. If you have more, my email address is there, and you can always write to me. And if you're interested in looking at these classes closer, theinternetcourse.net. That was one. Oh, hey, there's Jim. We just finished here.
I just got in, dude. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. We're here with Elena from Houston.
Hey, Elena.
Jim is my partner in crime here. Apparently these sessions have been really sparsely attended, so I had Elena and I had Mylene here and a couple other people jumped in and out.
How is it working? Is this like a distributed conference through Blackboard?
Yeah. A lot of people, sign up to do their presentations. I think they're mostly in the U.S., but it's covering all different time zones. Steve Hartigan has done these before. I've been in the Library 2.0 conference, and that really draws a huge crowd with lots of presenters.
Does it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. Whereas the ed tech stuff gets a little bit more.
Yeah.
Fucking ed tech.
Yeah, well, Elena's a tech teacher, so she knows all about that. Yeah.
Is there a video of it? Is there like an archive they have?
Well, I'm recording this right now. So the end of this is going to be weird, but I basically had PowerPoint slides that I walked through, which we're looking at in reverse here. I even got animated GIFs in there. Awesome. They said you can't animate in this Blackboard Collaborate, but if you upload a GIF on top of your PowerPoint, it works. But basically walk through different things we went through in the course, the midterm, the concept maps. I like how Brian Jackson jumped all over what we did. The crap test. I got our brainstorming screenshots and they're animated too. Nice.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah, and the different things I used as an inspiration. We talked about the internet course. We looked at true crime and how some of the students responded to that. And I talked about you. I had a nice picture of me.
Look at that. The bond.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the suit one. Look at this guy busting out in a suit. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. It looks like a great presentation.
Yeah, hopefully it went over. I borrowed my headset from work, so I'm not using the laptop microphone. Hopefully my sound is a little better.
Yeah, you sound good.
Good.
So let's go through it. Let's just go through it again, but the other way. I just want to see the flow. You don't have to talk about it, but just the...
Yeah, this is where I started. Basically, it's about putting the students in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
It looks good on my portfolio, yeah. It's another line for my CV.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And I went through the model discussing me and librarian and my inspiration and drivers there, about how we do our thing together.
Yeah.
I plugged your blog and your domain owns own there. Talked about the true crime class. Yeah.
Absolutely.
How we made the students lead the discussion in the blogging. I love Sarah's quote there. You know, like that's what we're learning. And the best Seth, of course. Oh, Elena's leaving. All right. Well, it was great having you here, Elena. And I'm glad you could join us. Yeah, I'm recording this whole thing. I should stop that.
Take care, Elena. Yeah,